In today's episode, we follow a couple from Scottsdale, Arizona, who flew to Iceland believing that paying for a tour gave them the right to overrule the people guiding them. They wanted the photo, they wanted the blue ice, they wanted the experience their followers had told them was unmissable. The guides in the glacier saw the warning signs 3 days before the collapse, and when they finally said the words out loud, the couple decided they knew better. What happened next inside Vatnajökull is something the guides who survived still don't talk about. It was April 4th, 2024, on the southeast edge of Vatnajökull, Europe's largest ice cap. The glacier covered roughly 8% of Iceland's landmass, over 7,900 square kilometers of compressed ice that had been forming, flowing, and breaking apart for thousands of years. From the air, it looked like a frozen ocean. From inside, it sounded like a building that was always falling down. Tourist season for the ice caves ran from November through March, when the glacier's meltwater channels froze solid enough that experienced guides could lead small groups into the natural cathedrals carved beneath the surface. The walls glowed an electric blue that did not photograph the way it looked in person, which is why every visitor tried, and every Instagram feed in the country was full of variations of the same shot. By April, the caves were closed. The melt began, the ice destabilized, and the same chambers that had been safe in February became death traps by spring. Locals knew this in their bones. The tourist authority published it on every brochure. The guiding companies posted it on their websites in 4 languages. Tyler Brennan, 31, and Madison Brennan, 29, arrived in Reykjavik on April 1st. They had been married for 18 months and ran a lifestyle and travel content account with a combined following of 142,000 across Instagram and TikTok. The Iceland trip was funded partially by an $8,500 brand partnership with an outdoor apparel company in exchange for a defined number of branded posts and reels. The contract specified deliverables that included iconic Iceland imagery, a phrase the brand's marketing team used without understanding what it meant in April. The couple's previous adventure travel consisted of a guided trip to Banff and a long weekend at a ski resort in Park City. Tyler had completed a weekend ice climbing intro course in Ouray, Colorado, 8 months before the Iceland trip. Madison had no technical experience at all. Their preparation for the glacier portion of the itinerary consisted of watching YouTube videos of ice cave tours and shopping for matching jackets in a color the brand had specified. They booked through a smaller operator that took late-season clients other companies turned away. The fee was $640 per person for a half-day excursion. The booking confirmation included a paragraph in bold red text noting that ice cave access in April was conditional on real-time glacier assessment, that no refunds would be issued for cancellations due to safety conditions, and that all clients were required to follow guide instructions without exception. Tyler and Madison read the paragraph the way most clients read it, quickly, and without registering that the words meant anything specific. Their assigned guides were Bjarni Helgason, 44, with 18 seasons on Vatnajökull, and Sigrun Johnsdóttir, 38, an ICSAR volunteer and certified glacier guide for 11 years. Bjarni had grown up in a farming family in Hoffen and had transitioned to guiding after a back injury ended his fishing career. Sigrun had been part of 14 rescue operations on the glacier, including a 2019 cave collapse that had killed 2 German tourists and nearly killed her partner. Both guides understood the economics of their position with the same clarity Sherpas in the Himalayas understand theirs. The smaller operators paid less than the larger companies. Refusing a client means losing a fee. Refusing a client repeatedly means losing a contract. And the high season ended in March, which meant April clients carried more weight in the income calculation than the month's reduced safety margin justified. The first warning came on the morning of the tour. Bjarni and Sigrun had driven out to the cave entrance at dawn for the standard pre-tour assessment. What they saw made them turn around and call the operator's office before they had finished their first cup of coffee. The temperature had spiked overnight. The meltwater that had been frozen solid through March was running again. Bjarni could hear it through the cave wall, a sound like a river being poured through a building's plumbing. A section of the cave's southern wall, which had been stable through their last assessment, now showed a hairline fracture that ran from floor to ceiling. The pattern was familiar to both of them. It was how caves announced they were preparing to close. Sigrun recommended cancellation. Bjarni concurred. The office pushed back. The Brennans had paid in advance, were scheduled for departure that afternoon, and had already posted to social media about the day's planned excursion. A cancellation meant a refund the operator did not want to issue, and a negative review the operator did not want to receive. The compromise the office proposed was to take the tour to a different, smaller cave, one Bjarni considered marginal but technically still open. Bjarni accepted the compromise because the alternative was being labeled difficult. He noted later that he had calculated the risk and judged it manageable. He admitted privately to Sigrun, factored in his daughter's tuition payment due the following week. Tyler and Madison arrived at the meeting point at 1:15 p.m., 45 minutes late. They had stopped at a black sand beach on the way for content and had lost track of time. Bjarni absorbed the delay without comment. Sigrun noted that they were dressed for photographs rather than for a glacier. Madison's jacket was a thin shell over a base layer that would be inadequate the moment they were inside the cave for more than a few minutes. And Tyler's gloves were the wrong type for handling carabiners. The pre-tour briefing was the second warning. Sigrun explained the change in plan, described the smaller cave, and stated explicitly that the original cave was no longer safe. She used the words structural instability and active melt. She said the phrase "do not separate from the group" 3 times in 5 minutes. Bjarni added that any client who left the marked path inside the cave would be escorted out immediately, no exceptions. Tyler asked whether the original cave was still photographable from outside. Sigrun said yes briefly, from the established viewpoint at a safe distance. Madison asked whether they could go inside the original cave just for a few minutes, just for the shot, since they had come all this way. Bjarni said no. The drive to the alternate cave took 40 minutes across the glacier road. Tyler filmed most of it. Madison narrated. The footage they captured during this segment would later be reviewed by South Iceland police as part of the investigation. Inside the alternate cave, the tour proceeded without incident for approximately 28 minutes. The chamber was smaller than what the Brennans had seen in their pre-trip research. The blue light less dramatic, the photographs less impressive. Tyler asked twice whether they could move further into the back of the cave for better angles. Bjarni declined both requests. Madison asked Sigrun whether the original cave was very far from where they were standing. Sigrun answered honestly that it was approximately 1.2 kilometers across the glacier surface. The third warning came when the group emerged from the alternate cave at approximately 3:40 p.m. Bjarni had been monitoring the temperature and the audible meltwater throughout the tour. The sound had increased. Sigrun noted a fresh crack in the surface ice approximately 30 meters from where they were standing. Both guides agreed silently that the day's conditions had moved from marginal to actively deteriorating, and that the return to the vehicle should be brisk. Tyler announced he wanted to walk to the original cave entrance for an exterior shot. Madison agreed. Bjarni said no, that they were leaving the glacier now, that conditions had changed and the assessment was no longer favorable. Tyler responded with a phrase Sigrun later remembered as some version of "we paid for this experience." Madison added that they only needed 5 minutes. What happened next is on the record from the Brennans' own footage and from Sigrun's witness statement. While Bjarni was packing rope and Sigrun was completing a check of the group's headlamps, Tyler and Madison walked off the marked path in the direction of the original cave. They moved quickly. They did not respond when Sigrun called after them. By the time Bjarni realized what was happening, they were already 100 meters across the surface. Sigrun ran. Bjarni followed at a slower pace, hampered by the equipment he was now carrying. Both guides were calling on the radio for backup, requesting an immediate ice SAR alert, and instructing the Brennan to stop and return. The Brennan reached the original cave entrance at approximately 4:02 p.m. and went inside. What they did not understand, what they could not have understood without Bjarni's 18 seasons of training, was that the cave's southern wall had been failing all day. The sound the guides had heard at dawn had been the early stage of a process that physics was now driving toward conclusion. The crack had widened. The meltwater behind the wall had been building pressure. The structural integrity of the chamber the Brennan had walked into had less than an hour of remaining stability. Sigrun reached the entrance 4 minutes behind them. She heard them before she saw them. Tyler narrating, Madison laughing, both of them excited by the visual their original itinerary had promised. Sigrun shouted for them to come out. She used the Icelandic phrase that translates roughly to now. This moment, no questions. The phrase her own grandmother had used when storms came in. The collapse began at approximately 4:11 p.m. The southern wall did not fall as a single event. It failed in stages, the first fracture widening into a sheet, the sheet calving into the chamber, the disturbance triggering a secondary collapse from the ceiling. Sigrun was knocked backward by the pressure wave from the entrance and lost consciousness for approximately 90 seconds. When she came to, the chamber was sealed. Bjarni arrived 11 minutes later. The radio call he made to IceSAR is preserved in the dispatch record. The recording is approximately 20 seconds long. His voice does not break, but the silences between words tell the rest of the story. The recovery operation took 3 days. Conditions remained dangerous throughout, with secondary collapses occurring on the second day that delayed access. Tyler and Madison were recovered together in a position that suggested Tyler had attempted to shield Madison in the final seconds before the ceiling came down. Cause of death for both was determined to be massive blunt force trauma consistent with glacial ice collapse, with secondary findings of hypothermia indicating both had survived the initial collapse for an indeterminate period before succumbing. Sigrun sustained a concussion, 2 cracked vertebrae, and lasting frostbite damage to her left hand. She was hospitalized for 9 days and did not return to Glacier, guiding for the remainder of the season. She has since returned to IceSAR, but no longer leads commercial tours. Bjarni was not physically injured but did not work the rest of the season. The operator faced a regulatory review that resulted in enhanced documentation requirements for off-season tours. No criminal charges were filed against the company. The Brennans' final social media posts, made from the alternate cave that morning, remained online for 6 weeks before family members had them archived. The brand partnership was quietly terminated. The matching jackets were returned to the manufacturer. Bjarni and Sigrun had seen it coming. They had given 3 explicit warnings. They had canceled the original itinerary, modified the tour, and used direct language in 2 languages to communicate the danger. None of it changed the outcome, because the people who needed to hear it had decided in advance that paying for a tour was the same as buying authority over the people running it. The glacier did not care, it never does. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this one, click on the screen.